Tanya and Justin. Well, it is great to be here at D.I.C.E 2017, and when Mike kindly asked me to moderate this, I was so excited because I've known Tanya for a long time, and Justin, of course we know Rick and Morty, and I think many folks in the audience are fans. How many people watch Rick and Morty? Crowd? Hey, all right.
Thank you.
You're amongst your people. Well, we know you're busy working on season 3. I saw a tweet that there's a script for episode 1, so it sounds like you're in the midst of all that, right?
We just started writing. No, we're posting, so it's not too far.
Yes. All right. Well, that's great news, but we want to talk about Squanch Tendo and the fact that, something I've always admired about you, Justin, is that you've been a gamer for a long time. We're getting into that, but you've really approached getting into games in such an interesting way and working with awesome people like Tanya, and we'll talk about some of the other partners. But whenever I've seen you at events over the years, and it's been clear that you really want to do this right if you do something in the gaming world. Let's talk by way of background. We know, obviously, all the television stuff you've done, amazing voices. Gaming, has that been a part of your life?
Yes.
At the beginning?
No.
So much so that I've missed deadlines due to gaming. So
Who do we blame
as a
for season 3 being late?
Yeah, all of you guys. I've spent hours and hours and hours, probably, I don't know, thousands maybe, throughout the course of my life gaming. It's actually really humbling to even be up here talking in front of this room, because I'm sure everyone in here has contributed to my entertainment over the years in one capacity or another. Yeah, I mean, just a student of games and not really even knowing that, just by consuming them over the years. Yeah.
What type of games do you like? Humor in your games? Do you like RPGs? What's
everything? I mean, Advanced Wars, Shadow of the Colossus, Grand Theft Auto, everything Nintendo, just about. So
yes,
I'm
the
all
studio name seems to maybe be somewhat inspired by Nintendo.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Exactly.
Squanch Dento, maybe we'll change it. That's what we're thinking about.
You obviously have played a lot of games over the years. I think I've been interested in the space. I think I first met you probably through, Cliff maybe or something years ago, and you were hanging out kind of with game developers. When you decided, hey, I maybe want to do something in games, how did you approach the idea? The studio with Tanya eventually happened, but when you first started thinking about games, what did you want to do?
It was VR, honestly.
Yeah.
I had been, like I said, just a lifelong gamer. And when I started dabbling in VR, just experiencing some of the things that you get to experience in VR, something in my brain a switch flipped, and it immediately I was like, I want to create something for this. And it wasn't just a sort of fly by night hobby that's gonna sort of die out. I knew immediately, this is a powerful medium. It's transformative. It's the sense of presence, the sense of being somewhere else is just, and it's also the thing that I've been daydreaming about my whole life. I remember having conversations with my friends, in 7th grade, and we're talking about VR, and what, can you imagine? And really, what we were talking about is what exists now.
Yeah.
So to be able to play in that space and be experimental in that space and just come up with all kinds of amazing, weird things that you can take people and have them experience is really, really exciting. Yeah. And
then Tanya, you obviously have worked on a lot of big games that everyone's familiar with, from Gears, Bulletstorm, a lot of work at Epic. Teaming up with Justin on this, obviously Epic was an early sort of thought leader in VR, Tim Sweeney, seeing that as the future. Tell us about the idea of founding this studio with Justin.
Yeah.
Also, just even meeting him, which I probably through Cliff, right?
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting timing for us. I had just left Epic, and I knew even before I'd left that I really wanted to get into VR. and find a pathway into it. And I'd had my VR eye-opening moment at a conference where I tried the Vive the first time and had that transformative experience. And it was that realization that I was like, I have to do this. There's no other choice. Like, I have to find a way. And so I went to E3 as a way to meet people that also wanted to do this. I was looking for someone, to start something with. And it was just by happenstance. I was playing Lawbreakers at Cliff's booth.
Right.
And we were just hanging out and ran into Cliff and Justin's agent. And we were talking about this. And he said, I have someone who's been looking for someone for a long time. Do you want to talk to him? And I was like, who is this guy? And they were like, oh, yeah, have you heard of Justin Roiland? And I was like, yeah, of course I've heard of Justin Roiland.
Justin who?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know who that guy is. And Justin called me a week later.
Wow.
And we, over many conversations, it was, probably over about 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah,
A lot of talking, how would this work, were we compatible?
Yeah, it was pretty clear right away that there was definitely a strong mutual sort of goal in mind, or just what we wanted to do in the space. It's funny because it all sort of it all kicked off through Valve and Chet and all those amazing guys there. I did the Dota 2 voice pack, the Rick and Morty voice pack, and by way of that, I got to go and visit Valve, and I planned that trip a couple weeks before GDC 2015, where they announced the Vive. So I had no idea that I was going to be going and getting to try the Vive fresh off the presses. I mean, it was its debuts at GDC, and then a week later I'm there. Yeah. And then I tried it, obviously, same thing, Tanya, my mind was completely blown. And I was no stranger to VR. I mean, I had the DK1, the DK2, Oculus, so I was very much, constantly in that. But the room scale thing just threw me for a loop. And then those guys were, Chad and all those guys there were super, super helpful in giving me names of people to talk to. If you're really serious, here's some connections. Yeah. Go see what you can make happen. And I did just that. And then it was then I was Ophir at UTA, Ophir Lupu, was helping me, and I'd met with a ton of people, and then finally met Tanya, and it was just like minds. Immediately we clicked. And then, we had a bunch of conversations, and it sort of led to the formation of Squanch Tendo. Squantrosoft was on the table, Squanch Station.
All of which
coming soon.
Yeah, all of those
great
were
choices.
Squanch Santo. It didn't make much sense.
So, what I love about the way you approach the studio is, the people you're working with. The first game, which some of you may have played, Accounting, which you guys put out last year. It felt like sort of a bootstrap project that you guys just wanted to experiment with VR, and you worked with someone who, you guys probably remember the Stanley Parable from a couple of years ago, which was a great game that, was on Steam, incredible narrative.
Amazing.
Voiceover, just came out of nowhere, and people were like, this is an incredible story. And William, one of the creators of that, teamed up with you guys. So it's you're making so many right decisions, I feel in terms of the people you're working with.
Partnerships,
to think about. So how did you get, you guys had the studio, how do you get in touch with William?
William lied. I was in the Respawn building, and I didn't know, I saw some guys going up an elevator with Respawn shirts, and I was like, what the fuck? So I followed them up, and then I kind of peeked and I saw them go, and I was like, it was the Respawn offices, and it was in the most weird, the weirdest location in LA. Yeah. And I'm like, so I started texting or tweeting. I was like, does anyone work at Respawn? I'm in your building. I would love to meet you guys. Are there any Rick and Morty fans, or whatever? I was trying to just any leverage I could to go meet people. And William responds, and he's like, I work at Respawn. And I'm like, awesome. So I immediately follow him, and he DMs me, and then the first thing he says is, I'm really sorry, I don't actually work at Respawn. I'm very sorry. But then I realized who he was, and I was like, oh, well, this is amazing. I'm a huge fan. And then we just began Skyping and just talking about VR. We were talking about all kinds of stuff, locomotion and narrative and just really awesome conversations, and we both sort of, again, like very like-minded, very, very curious and interested about the same types of things and the same type of experience that we could bring to VR.
Right.
And so we planned the game jam, and it was very much a game jam. Like him and Dom, his art lead artist came, and it was the three of us, and we just over 4 days, we ate weed chocolate. I'm gonna admit it, a little bit, and we just made this insane experience, and then of course he got hit by a car in April. It was horrible. He tweeted that on April 1st. So
Do you believe him?
I didn't believe him. I was like, he's full of shit. That's his sense of humor. And then
he's out there.
3 days later, he's still talking about it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Did you really?
Are we sure it happened? You never know.
No, yes, it happened. It was horrible. But he's fine now. But anyways, that's a bit of a cul-de-sac. But we had a blast making that. And it was just fun. It was just pure fun, pure let's create an experience where we can transport the player continually throughout the experience to new locations. And really the most important thing was, for me anyways, was I wanted to, being such a massive fan of gaming and a massive fan of VR, and having bought every single VR experience, even up to now, I think my Steam VR number is almost at 300 games, which is ridiculous. But I really wanted to inject character, have some weird characters in the spaces, have some sort of guide, that's sort of walking you through the game, or not really, but just, it's very Alice in Wonderland, because they're not actually walking you through the game; they're just kind of screaming at you. But it was such a fun collaboration. Like William's a genius. And working with him was just such a delight, and I hope to do it again for sure.
Yeah, when I first played it, the thing that struck me about it was the density of the experience. And I think a lot of VR games are very cool and experimental with the gameplay, but the way you sort of use narrative and voice and character, it brings the world to life. And it, even though sometimes they're contained spaces, I love sort of it's a possibility space where you can sort of pick up something, see how something's going to react. It reminds me a lot of the old adventure games where I'd be, clicking around to see, what the text prompt was when you clicked on this, or even the old shooters where it's Duke Nukem, where you'd be like, can I really play pool on this table? Let me go spacebar here, and pushing the limits of kind of the environment.
Yeah.
And I thought you guys did a really interesting job with that. Tanya, when you're thinking of kind of, VR and the types of experiences you want to build, is that one of the kind of, guiding principles of Squanch Tendo is let's do narrative-driven experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, that you mentioned that, because even in pairing up with Justin, we both feel like this is almost it's not a reset point for games, but it kind of is for VR. We get a chance to come up with totally bizarre new ways to implement things and do things. My whole background is in production. And I'm used to, A comes before B comes before C, and this is kind of the way it goes. And with accounting and with all the stuff that we're currently making, we've completely reset that paradigm and said, well, wait, let's rethink this. Especially because as a studio, we want to make these character-driven games that are not just fun, but they're funny, and have lots of different, surprising interactions that you wouldn't really expect to have happen. And so accounting was really our test bed for that. And thankfully William is so awesome, right? These guys came up with so many brilliant, ideas, but that's 100% the goal of the studio moving forward. And we would love, we're currently experimenting with a long form, I mean, that's less of an experiment, but we have a long game, a traditional, game length game that I can't talk too much about that we're in development on.
VR, right?
Yep, for VR. But then we'd also love to make more games that are that dense experience.
Short form, accounting.
Accounting, and continues to experiment with the new way of doing things and the discovery of mechanics and narrative and design.
It's funny because you mentioned the point and click genre, and I find that that's sort of it's back in a weird way in VR. It's different though.
Right.
It's tickling a part of your brain that is completely. It's not. It's a different part of your brain that gets tickled when you're looking at a screen in your living room, and that disconnect. When you're actually in the space, and you physically lean down to pick something up, and then a character comments on the thing you're picking up.
Yeah.
There's something just so weird about that. And it's super simple. It's not anything that hasn't been done really well many times before in gaming, but to experience it in VR, it really does hit you differently. It resonates really. And if the character can just be insane too, like the tree guy, just like, fuck you, get out of here, like constantly, and then you pick up the thing and he's like, hey, that's my thing. And then you pick up the other thing and he's like, that's my other thing, or, it's all like just triggers and hooking all that stuff up to interaction. But it does have that point and click feel, where you're just sort of in a point and click game, you're like, grab this, use here, and then a character says something funny.
Right.
And in some cases, at least when I was much younger and playing a lot of those games, sort of at their peak, I was doing a lot of that. Like, I'm going to try everything and see.
That's
what
why,
every
especially
character.
when it's funny.
Yeah.
You want to put even when you guys may or may not know, he did the voices in Valve's The Lab with the sort of slingshot game.
Yeah.
The core is there, and it's like I would just sit there wait for the dialogue to finish how much more they got to say before I fire the core, because you want to push the limits and see how far you can go and get all the funny lines.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And then, or you can just whip it, just go right away, and then there's sort of an interesting replayability factor there. Where it's like, I still haven't heard every single core
that's
core
the
voice.
Easter egg aspect of it.
Yeah.
Of let me see what happens when I do
It's
this
amazing.
or that.
Yeah.
And you want to find all the humor, and as you said, those moments where characters are reacting. One thing I wanted to ask you guys about was, as you said, it's primitive now, where it's like pick up an object, someone will react to it. When you have characters in these worlds, tell me about sort of your thinking about, how does a character act or react to you? Because I've had moments where certainly, you have these characters and you want, like in Batman or something, you want to walk up to them, you want to slap them, but you can't.
Yes.
Or they can't react to you. So is the next layer to you figuring out how do these, characters not only react to things you're doing in the environment, but sort of what you're doing with them and that interaction?
Yeah, I mean, even just an experience as simple as being in a room with a character and just spending your time on just every single possible thing that character could react to.
Yeah.
You use gaze tech, you can use collision points and stuff, but that would be amazing if you spent a bunch of time and you just, rather than a bunch of exploration or whatever, it's just you and a character.
Right.
It's like, okay, what things can I do? Maybe a few objects in the room, but it's like, what things can I do to elicit new responses from this character? And maybe it's to try to get the character to do something, but you have to figure out how. Grabbing his arm will elicit a different response, or smacking him, or petting his head. I mean, that's all. I mean, that would just be super amazing. I mean, I would play something like that for for a really long time.
Especially if it's funny with a cool character. That's where I think, cool
Mm-hmm.
character, cool voice brings it to life.
And it's funny because our studio, we can't talk too much about the bigger long form game we're making, but there was a period of time where I was going away from comedy, and just sort of thinking about it differently, and maybe a little more horror, not like Resident Evil style, like scary, but just more eerie. And I think even going down that road, it kept going back to comedy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm so drawn to absurd and comedy that I realized pretty quickly, I'm like, no, let's not try to do this.
Well, I think too with VR, there's such an opportunity for how you can interact with characters that we didn't have prior to this point. Being able to stand next to another human being that's your size, right? And you can see right into their face and walk around them as they're talking to you and see how they react to you. And even in accounting, there's a really simple thing that we did that was so cool with Tree Guy with the phone.
Oh,
yeah. You want to tell it?
Yeah, it's super simple, but it was one of those things that when we first played the build, and this was 3.5 days in, working on we're insane,
3.5 days.
Very little sleep, but William had hooked it all up. And we played through it. You get to the tree world, and Tree Guy's screaming at you, and when the phone rings and you answer the phone, his audio switches over to like, who is that? Who's that on the phone? That's my phone. Who is that? Who are you talking to? It just goes on and on and on. And then after a little bit, you hear William and Dom on the phone, and they start asking, who is that in the background? Who's that screaming in the background? They're both at the same time asking who the other person is, and it's so weird because it's like that to me is one of the highlights of the experience, because it's just it really you're not expecting that, and it really does feel like everything's alive, and it's so weird. It's such a simple thing though, but it was so effective.
But that's the magic of VR, right? It's not just sitting and watching an experience. It's being a part of that experience and feeling like this is really kind of like something that would happen in real life, that tricks my brain into, no matter how absurd or how crazy or how fantastical, into believing that this world exists and it's my world, right?
Yeah, you hear people say I was in VR, not I was playing VR.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You're in it.
Almost like just this crazy transformative medium.
Yeah.
I want everyone in this room to start making more VR games so that I can play more.
And I mean, obviously, VR's out there. It's it's building lots of games. But I think, as you said, the narrative aspect of it is something to me that I feel like there are lots of experimental things. And Tilt Pressure is really fun to go in and express that way.
Yes.
But when you look
Space
at
Pirate Trainer, amazing.
Yeah, and that stuff. But you see those experiences, then you imagine layering narrative on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pirate Trainer, but with cool characters and all
Yep.
that, which is where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, you guys have done some early work in that, which I think is really impressive. We should also mention that there is a Rick and Morty VR thing coming out, which, again, another really cool partnership is with the guys who did Job Simulator at Alchemy Labs.
Yep.
You teamed up with those guys to do that, which is not Squanch Tendo, the separate thing, but...
Yep. Adult Swim Games is publishing. Yeah, it was, again, those guys are geniuses when it comes to the VR medium, especially when it comes to packing a room densely with just interactivity and all kinds of experimentation.
Yeah. That's going to be incredible, I feel like, with
characters
in that world.
The Rick and Morty game is very much that. I mean, it's you're in the garage, you're in Rick's garage, and there's so much crazy stuff to do in that space. And then, of course, we have the ability to portal to other places, which is really awesome. And it was something, actually, I remember talking forever ago with William about, and a few other devs about, just sort of pontificating about ways to locomote players to new spaces in VR, and the idea of a magic door that pops up in the middle, if we're talking room scale, of the room, that you can sort of just clip through, and then you can look back and see where you were, but now you're in a new room, the door whoosh, goes away, and it made perfect sense to do stuff like that with the Rick and Morty game, because we have the portal gun, but yeah, those guys are amazing, and again, that all of that stuff came from that trip to Valve, and Chet and all those guys, just being super, super cool and supportive to somebody who is an outsider, who has never made a game, and I'm sure there's so many people who are like, I want to make games, I want to do it, and I don't know why they took me seriously,
I think they were fans of what you do, and obviously you had taken the time to meet everyone, and that's what's cool is Alchemy guys. I'm sure when Alex and those guys met it's like, oh, cool, Justin's.
I mean, that was their old Job Sim demo, the very first kitchen demo, which is now the final is totally different, but that blew my mind. I was just like, and then they were in town for VRLA 2015. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Yeah. And I had been in touch with them, and I was like, just come over. So the whole team came over to my house, and they had builds for the convenience store and the office,
right.
And yeah, they had them on a thumb drive. They put them on my computer, and we just drank and played VR all night. And it was and that's really where we became where I got to know them, and we became friends that night.
Yeah.
And then we flew to Atlanta to pitch Mike Lazo, who runs Adult Swim, on this game. He had never tried VR, so we threw him in the Vive, and he flipped out. I mean, he flipped out, and then he got out of the Vive, and we're like, so we want to do that, but with Rick and Morty, and he's like, green light. It was the easiest pitch ever. I mean, it's like on the backs of these amazing demos by Weaver and all these other amazing studios, and of course Alchemy, being a big part of that, because we showed him a few of the levels in Job Simulator.
Oh yeah, it's a brilliant fit.
It's so great, and and it's all really like my goal. I mean, obviously the studio is a passion. It's like this is my opportunity to be able to have fun and make experimental things, because VR is such an experimental format, or medium, and and my goal is to have fun, make amazing things, but also I want to do everything in my power to help the medium grow, to help it on the software side if I can. Yeah. If we do what we're hoping to do, if everything goes smoothly,
which it won't,
which it never does. No. But we hope to bring solid content software to the medium to the best of our ability.
And also, what I think is really cool about the studio is how you're set up, Tanya. Like the team is actually with Justin as he's working on Rick and Morty, so it's like they're involved, right?
Yeah, we have the core studio is out in Burbank, so we actually have studios in 2 locations. I'm located in Raleigh with our art team, and we're based out of downtown Raleigh, and then the rest of the gameplay team is out in Burbank in the Rick and Morty offices. Awesome. So they've been super cool and lending space to us as we kind of grab more and more of it. Yeah. And so when Justin is working on something, editing something, recording something, he can just pop in.
I'm able to post season 3 and work on the VR stuff. Yeah. We have an amazing team too.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
We really got, I don't want to say lucky, because it was hard legwork that Tanya put in, but we just have such an incredible team, and the culture of the studio is just so good and fun. I'm just really excited for the future of.
I know you can't say a ton about it, but it's not a Rick and Morty game. It's like a new
IP,
world,
Totally
IP,
new
right?
IP, yeah.
Yeah. All the stuff we're doing is new IP, at least right now. All the pitch decks we have and everything, it's all new IP.
That's great. And when you look at the VR space now, obviously there's lots of platforms. There are things like room scale. There are things like mobile. When you think of the market and sort of where it's going to be and the type of games you want to build, where are you trying to focus? Like, is this something where it's obviously room scale is amazing with Vive and incredibly compelling, but how are people really going to have that set up versus having a Gear VR?
It's tricky right now. I think that's that's one of the hurdles with VR is the hardware is so fragmented in what the experiences are, and I think the best experiences are built from the ground up to support whatever the hardware is. Yeah. As a studio, I'm in love with every VR hardware, so I can find something to love about every one of them. The Daydream, Gear VR, Oculus, all of them are amazing to me. PSVR, there's something to love about all of them. So my approach has just been, what amazing experience would I do with these constraints? Like, how can I use these constraints as an offer? Yeah. And it's been really fun. It's been really fun. I mean, the funnest part obviously is those early days of designing and the spark and for me it's all in my sketchbook. So I'm game design and story and character and I'm thinking about all those things in concert. But yeah, we've got pitches that work for seated gamepad. We've got pitches that work that really are designed for room scale. Mm-hmm. You kind of can't convert them to. You can't port them. There's certain experiences you just can't really port over properly to the other.
I think that the thing that we talked about from the very beginning is no matter what the medium, like Justin said, designing for it, bespoke for that platform is really important, and taking advantage of what that platform has to offer. But also is the recreation of what makes VR special. VR not just as a second screen on your face, not a floating camera, it's how do you put the player in the world, regardless of whether it's seated gamepad or room scale. And that's been the thing that we've been approaching for every single one of our pitches, regardless.
Which, by the way, there's plenty of games that do the VR as a screen really well that I love. Yes. Hero Bound and I mean all the stuff Insomniac is doing, Feral Rights and they're amazing experiences. But yeah, for us as a studio, we want to transport the player so that they feel like they're actually in the world and they're affecting the world and they're a part of it.
They're a star.
With a very low threshold of nausea. As little nausea as possible. Yeah. That's the other thing.
Lots of comedy. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys, for giving us a sneak peek.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for having us.
Justin, good luck with season 3.
Thank you.
Nintendo. See you soon.
Thank you.